Welcome to the latest episode of Lynn's 49 Willis Pickup Project. I'm just about coming to the end of the stuff that I've got in my shop. So we're finished up with the cab. The grill in there is all done. And now we're going to start working on these doors. So let's take a second and go through this, and I'll show you what work needs to be done. We started this a while back by gutting these doors. So they are just an empty shell now, almost no weight to them. And I did get a start on this before I started the video. The first thing I needed to do was to weld up a whole bunch of holes. This, over the years, has had so many different sets of mirrors on it. There were holes everywhere on both of these doors. So I took a minute and just welded all those up and got them cleaned up. And then I started stripping some of the paint off and just to see where we're at. And for the most part, these look pretty good. They have been worked on, and they're not perfect. This door in particular is pretty decent. I don't think it needs much of anything. This door, on the other hand, though, there are a lot of pinholes. They start up here, they come around, and as I was cleaning it up, they just kept appearing. So rather than try to weld this stuff up, because if there's pinholes like this, there's just going to be more of them coming through. We know it's got to be really pitted inside there. So I need to remove this panel and replace it. So we'll see what we want to do with that. One of the other things that we need to do on this door, let me show you this, right in the center, this hole right here. This is where the door limiters go that keep the door from overextending and creasing up the cab. But you notice this one, there's really nothing behind it. It's just a big hole. Let me show you what it's supposed to look like. Okay, it's kind of dark here, but you see there's a plate in there, and that plate is welded, and it goes, it's got a backer, but it goes all the way through here. So we need to get a different plate for this, or make one. So that's another piece of work that needs to be done. We're going to run over to French Lake Auto today to see if we can find a donor to cut that backing plate out of. But I want to show you on my truck why I don't know if we're going to be able to get away with this. Now this door, I've got it limited. I only have mine open about that far. But I think even with it open all the way, it's really dark, but I need to get back in here. So making a cut here and here is fine, but to get back inside there, I don't know if we can do that with a grinder. And I'm not going to remove doors at the junkyard. If they happen to have one that's off, that would be ideal. But that's the going in plan. Assuming we can't get that backing plate out of a truck at the junkyard, I started working on fabricating my own. And so I took some measurements and I started making up pieces. Now this would be the piece that goes right up against the inside of that door jamb. And then the piece that the limiter mounts to is actually recessed in about 9/16 of an inch. So I'm going to do this in multiple pieces. So what I've done is made up another piece, bent it up, and it is 9/16 from here to here. And what I'm thinking is I can weld that in right to there. I need to cut this down. This is big right now, but just to give you an idea of what I'm up to. And then I've got a couple of pieces here that I've cut out that I can weld in here and then trim this to fit. And it's really hidden. So, I mean, this isn't a bad solution. This would work really well. But we'll try to cut that one out if we can get one. Otherwise, we'll just fab something. So Len's out for the day, and it's show and tell time. Well, I'll let you tell the story, Len. You brought some stuff that you want to show us.
Yeah, with the help of Tim in the old Willys farm, I found a guy in Cincinnati who bought some of these sill plates a while back and never used them, and so I went down to Cincinnati and bought them, plus a bunch of other new old stock items from him.
Now, there's a guy we've been trying to get a hold of on the old Willys farm that actually reproduced these. Did this like, what, 7, 8 years ago, and then he hasn't made any for a while, and he's just been real busy. But fortunately, Len was able to track these down. We don't know if they're ever going to go back into production, but let's get a close-up. You can see these things. They are just cool. And they fit.
Yep. Yeah. And with my atomic gray color I'm going to have, that'll look nice with that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, that'll look good.
No kidding. All right, so we don't have a lot that we need to do today, but we're going to do a little work on those doors, maybe strip some paint, and we may make a run out to French Lake just to see about that door backer and see if we can get one of those. If we can't, I already showed you what my plan B looks like. So let's get going, Len.
Okay.
We're back from French Lake Auto, and it was a nice day to be out there. And we found what we were looking for, and I really expected it was going to be kind of a battle to try to get a grinder in and cut this thing out. Turns out we didn't have to do that. This was inside the door, and the only thing holding it in was the little rod that comes through here. I took the cotter pin out, pulled the rod out, and this thing dropped into the bottom of the door. I didn't have to cut anything. It had already been loosened up, and you can see the spot welds here had already broken away. So that couldn't have gone any better. And then on top of that, we take it up to the desk, and the guy says, it's free. Just go ahead and take it. We didn't have to even pay anything for this. So yeah, that really worked out nice. I don't have to fab anything up, and this is going to work out. The other thing I'm going to point out, you notice the yellow paint in here? Yeah, this came off of that parts truck that I sold them. So we got the grill off the parts truck, and now we got this inner door limiter brace that we can clean up, and I can weld this into that door. We put another hard day in here of grinding and stripping paint off of doors. We got quite a ways, and then we got tired, and then my neighbor started a fire across the way, and the smoke was blowing in, and we got smoked out. So a good excuse to call it a day. But we got this mostly done. So the good news here is these doors look really good. Yeah, they've taken a beating, but we took the paint off and everything looks good on this door. On this door, it looks good from those ribs all the way up. A couple of things I want to show you though. On the very bottom, and then starting up this side just a little bit, we've got a lot of holes, and I showed this earlier. So I'm just going to have to get a piece of metal and make a bottom for this, and that's not that difficult. So we'll just do this from some plain old flat sheet metal. We don't need to buy a patch panel for this or anything. The other thing I've been noticing in different spots on this truck is, I don't know if I can really do this justice, but if you start looking up the side here, you see how the leading edge on this door, really this whole panel looks different. You can see different scratches from where we just use those stripping pads. And I think the reason for that, I think this is lead. I think this is probably a very old repair and somebody used lead on it. So I'm just going to leave it alone. we'll let our paint and body guy decide how he wants to deal with that. But at least we got all the paint stripped off of there. So I will go get some metal, some 18 gauge, and start making this piece. First thing I want to do for making this door bottom patch is get this opened up. So the way that these doors are constructed is the outer skin actually folds over the inner skin and gets flattened down there. So the first thing I need to do is bend this whole thing up so that when I cut the outside that I can just drop this out of here, and hopefully this inner piece will be undisturbed and original. All right, I'm kind of running out of room to get this screwdriver in here because of this, the bottom of the door. So I went into my toolbox and I found a screwdriver that I had modified a long time ago. Don't be afraid to seemingly destroy tools to make new ones. So this was just a flat screwdriver, and I thought, man, if I just had something with a hook. So I heated it up and bent a hook on there and kind of sharpened the end. And let me show you what I'm doing with this one now. You can see what's going on here. This one, it gets up underneath here pretty well. I might actually have a little weld right there. I don't know. We'll leave that for now. But move you over here. I'm just going to work my way down here. Yeah, that works great. A lot quieter than hammering with a chisel. Yep, that's easy. That's going to work really good. So I'm on the passenger door right now. I've got this all peeled back. What I did was I took my Dremel and just cut here so I could peel this back going up this direction and still leave this in place. And this worked great. I used this to peel the whole thing. Then I took my channel lock and went along and just stood it all up. So now you can actually see where, let's see if we get in close. You can see this inner seam between the outer and inner panel right at the bottom. And this inner, I was hoping this would look good. This inner panel looks really good. So I think we're in good shape there. All we have to do is deal with the outer panel. Up around this corner, we're probably going to have some work to do. I'll know more when I remove that panel, but I may have to patch in just a little section here, you know, cut this away and patch in the inner panel before I can put the outer on. I think we're ready to go, though. This looks like it's going to be a fairly easy job now. Okay, this is what we're going to cut. All along here, and then I'll jog it up and around there. I don't know if I'm going to cut this in one piece or two. We'll just see how it goes. Okay, I've got this all cut all the way through. but it doesn't want to pop off. And I was looking closer. It actually looks like we might have a few spot welds in here. So I'm going to grab a drill and just open these up and see if that's what we got going on. All right, I drilled some pilot holes here so I can keep my spot weld bit where it belongs. See if that does the job. There we go. Okay, I just got to find the rest of these and get them drilled out. I think I got all the spot welds. Thought I'd bring you back before I pull this off so we can see it together. Now, we're still attached down here. Let's see if I can work it loose. There we go. There we go. Okay. So this piece is off in one piece. That's good. Let's get a closer look inside the door now. Okay, the inner panel, while it's rusty, it's mostly surface rust. I think if I clean it up, this is good. I don't think I have to do anything with this inner panel. Just to prep it and take this opportunity to get a little bit of paint in there and make my replacement panel for this. All right, I'm coming back to show you two things here. First of all, on this corner, that inside flange isn't as good as it looked. You can see light coming through there, and it goes up into here. So I did this on my doors too when I replaced some of this rotten metal, is I had to come up here a little ways, and I ended up doing them as 3 panels, one across the middle and one on each end. So I might end up doing it. The other thing, though, that I've been looking at, and I mentioned this, I might have mentioned it earlier, but when we were stripping paint off of this, there was a section of this door where it just looks different than the rest of it. It's like our disc was cutting into this more than it would the metal, which leads me to believe this might be lead. And let me confirm that for you. Okay, here's how we're going to find out if there's lead in that door. This is a piece I cut out. You can see the back side there. We've got some rust. Front side's shiny. If you look at the side profile, look at how thick that is. I mean, we're talking well over 1/8. So now what I'm going to do is hit this with a torch. And let's see how it reacts. Whoa. Bring it out here where you can see it. That's confirmation. This is lead down here. So I've never worked with lead before. I got another chunk of this here. Now let's say I need to weld up to this. Welding up against that lead, I have welded near it, and it never really works out well, but what I've seen people do, and I don't know if this wire brush is going to be aggressive enough, but we'll try it. They will basically just heat this up and then use a brush. And what I'm going to do is basically take the lead out right along the edge where I need to weld. think that'll work. Maybe I need a little more aggressive brush, but look it up close here. You can see this. Yeah. So we're getting the lead off of that edge. I should be able to get enough of it off of there to get a good clean weld. Okay, I cut a little further up, and I think the holes in this come up to about here. Let's get my hand out of the way. So I'll cut this right here. I'll take this whole piece out and make a patch. Get the patch for that inner panel ready to weld in. So I'm just going to quick weld this thing in. Do a little grinding. I ran it a little bit long so I could just grind that even with the rest of the flange. And then this inner will be ready to go. All right, we're all welded in. Got nice edge here. Now I just need to flatten this out with a grinder and then trim this to be even with this edge. The patch is done. This doesn't need to be pretty because it's all going to be covered, but at least it's not rusty metal anymore. Now I'm going to get some rust converter in here while I got this open. Take care of this right now, get rust converter in, and then I'll get some paint down on that. And then I can move on and get that patch moving. I got all the prep done on this, so I used some OSPO rust converter on this. First, I wire wheeled it, used some OSPO on there, let that set, and then I came back with, I had some leftover Eastwood rust encapsulator, so I put that on there both sides, and now I think this is ready to go. Now, I had made a very similar repair on my truck when I did the work. Mine was actually needed a lot more work on this inner panel. This one's in much better shape. But I think I'm going to take the same approach. I'm going to do this in 3 panels. I'll do each of these end pieces first. And then I'll do that middle panel. It's just a lot easier to line things up if I do it that way than to try to cut one piece that has these corners all in the right place and that the width is perfect. It's a lot easier just to line up individual pieces. And the cost to me on this one is just one little weld seam down each of these sides. So that's a pretty good trade-off. So I've got a 2x4 sheet of 18 gauge here that I picked up. It was just over 20 bucks, so not much into that. So that's my material that's going to go in here. So let's get started. We're going to start with this end piece. So I've cut a piece of sheet metal out. I put a mark here where I want to bend it because this has got to bend all the way over, and it's about a 1/2 inch. So I'll put my bend in there, and I'll do that first bend, and then I'll do some more fitting on this. I don't have a sheet metal brake, so I'm going to use my vise. And this is basically a poor man's version of a sheet metal brake, so I'll put a couple angle irons in here. I'll get this lined up exactly where I want that bend to go. Let's put it right here. Okay, we'll snug this up. And then I'll use a couple of C-clamps to make sure these ends don't spread out. They shouldn't on something this narrow anyway. I mean, this vise is almost wide enough for this piece. But when I get to that big, long 3-foot panel, I'm going to definitely need this. So I thought I'd show you how it works right now. So now we'll just put a 90 on it for starters. You know what? I think I'm going to use something different for that. I'm afraid I might put a bunch of dents in it. All right, it's a start. All right, we got this one. My first edge is set. just to make sure that we're good when it goes in. That's a good lineup. I'm going to pull this back a little bit now. I want to make this cut to narrow this up so that it fits up against this piece. So I'm going to make a mark right there. I need to cut away that line since I'm using a Sharpie. I'll make a mark down here as well. We'll connect these two and then cut this off. Okay, we got this fit in real nice, and I can still kind of adjust these with a like a flap disc to get a better fit or a little bit of a gap for welding. But I think we're in good shape here. Now the next thing I want to know is where I need to cut it off down here so that I can do that bottom bend. I took a measure on the other door from basically the door handle opening right on one of these little notches. We'll get it one more time, but anyway. And I have to be at 28.5 inches at the very bottom. So I'm going to put a mark on there. I'm actually going to go down just a little bit further. I'll cut this, bend it, and then I can move it up just a little bit for fitting it, and then grind this off till it fits just right. I want to show you how this corner lays out. What they've done is just cut a 45 here in these two flanges that wrap around, and they left a little bit on the bottom so they could kind of pound that over and make a nice edge. The other thing is that this doesn't come to a point. It's got a little bit of a round to it, so I'm going to have to work the metal a little bit to get that round in there. So this is the panel I had bent up. So what I did was, before I was able to bend this in, I had to cut a 45, so this had a place to go. So I've got my 45 on there now. The next thing these need to do is bend in enough that they're going to wrap under a little bit for starters. So we will do that next. And I've already cut this to length. I had to trim a little bit. I left it long. I was able to trim it. I've measured. I know where I need to be when I'm at 29 inches. Now just to pound these over, these two, what I'm going to do is slip a piece of 18 gauge in behind that so I get good spacing, and then I'll bring it over. Not all the way. I want to have it up just enough that I've got some freedom to move this. But let's take those down next. All right, I've got this clamped to the table. I put a scrap piece of 18 gauge in the middle here so that when I roll this over, I leave room for that inner rocker. Now we'll just bring it in. All right, let's start. All right, I got this just about set here. Turns out earlier I had cut the 45 out of the wrong section. It was actually a section that needed to be cut off. But I was finally able to bend that in and figure out how this lands. Now this drops right in here. I'll take a quick measure, 28.5. We're right on the money there. Now, before I go any further, I don't want this bare metal to be left in here. So while it's still sticking up a little bit, I'm going to shoot a little primer and some paint in there just to protect it, and then I'll keep working on this. Change of plans. I think before I get any paint or primer in there, I want to see if I can work on this corner because I want that to have a round to it. So we'll start with a hammer and see if I can do something with it. Nope, that's not going to work. I think the only thing to do is get at it with a grinder. The part that I opened up there, what I can do is fill a little weld in there when we're all done and then grind it again until I have the shape I want. Thought we would get going on that centerpiece while we're waiting for the paint to dry on both of those end pieces. So I've got this all set up, angle iron, lots of clamps, everything is nice and tight. You know, it would be easier probably to have the other end, the longer end, sticking up to bend. But for me, it's easier to take this because this is going to get hammer marks in it, but it's wrapped around underneath the door. So it's easier for me to do it this way. All right, I'm going to take a break. I'll be back when I get this flattened. Well, I think it was a good call to do it this way because I got hammer marks all through here. It's really pretty beat up. There may be better ways to do this, but anyway, I'm halfway there because this still has to be folded over. But I'm glad I spared the face of this panel and didn't ding it up that bad. Okay, we got our first piece lined up. I got this at the right spot. I've got this flush with here. I'm going to start tacking this one in. I'm not going to go much further than that. I want to get the whole thing tacked in before I do any serious work on it. So I'll put a tack here, maybe one down here just to kind of lock this into place for starters. Okay, here's a little more progress. I welded in or tacked in at least the other end piece, so those are ready to go. And with those in, I was able to size up and fit my centerpiece in. Now, before I do anything else, I got to flip over the centerpiece and make sure that I have clearance for both of my door drain slots that are down underneath there. Right, these might be a little hard to pick up. Let me get something light behind them so you can see what we have here. Right here, this is actually raised up a little bit. We've got one on this side and one on this side. And what these allow is between the inner door here and the bottom, it allows water to escape. So I need to make sure that this flange, it folds up over here, that I take it out between here and here so that that water's got a place to go. I'll cut out here. So now when these go in, these are both open so water can run through there. All right, here we go. So I'm going to tack this in. I'll probably tack this edge, kind of bend that into place, tack that edge, maybe here and here, and then we'll see where we're at. Okay, I think we've got everything where we want it now. We're tacked in on each end, and in the middle now I got to start pulling this together. But this panel on the door kind of relaxed when we took this out because this was kind of holding the structure. So it's kind of laid itself down. What I want to do is open up this gap for beginners because there's places I think where, like in here, where it's not going to work. But I think what I'm going to do, at least for the first try, rather than running a zip disc through here and making a wider gap, I'm going to use my little hacksaw, my air hacksaw, and see if I can run Just a nice line the whole way. That'll give me a real thin gap, but enough that I can now raise this up and start tacking this thing in place. Now that we're tacked in, this would be a good time to flip that door over and pound over all those overlapping flange, and then I can finish welding. We got that all folded over and flattened down good. Actually laid down pretty decent. And I've already started doing a little bit of welding here, just take care of those seams. Now let's flip it over and I'll show you progress on the face. Okay, I got the 3 patches fully welded in. So I'm done with that. Now I just need to grind those welds down. And it's still going to need a lot of body work, but we got the rust out of there now. So I think this is the extent of the work I'm going to do on this door now, at least from a metal perspective. I still got a little bit of paint to strip off on the inside, but I've ground it down. I've only gone as far as I need to go. This is going to need body filler, and so I'm going to leave that to Jesse, who will be doing the rest of the work on this cab and on these doors, all the body work really. The other work he's going to have to do is, earlier I showed you where that lead was. It really starts up here, right up there, runs all the way down this leading edge. And leading edge even seems like it's tipped in a little bit, so there's a fair amount of work to do on that, but I really don't want to. I don't want to jump in and try to do that myself, because he may want to leave that lead in there. It's actually probably a good, decent base. Who knows what's underneath there? So I'm going to leave that. But I set the cab or the door up on the cab just to make sure that we had a good fit. Now this isn't final, but all the lines look like they're lined up good, and I think this is going to be okay to go back in when it's all said and done. So now I just need to get back on this other door and finish stripping paint and take a closer look to see if there's anything else this might need. I've taken these doors as far as I'm going to take them. Last thing I ended up doing was stripping all the paint off of the inside of this door. I don't worry about this part because it'll be all covered. So I left that alone. The other thing I did off camera is install that door limiter plate. So that's all welded in now. Okay, so that's it. Nothing more for me to do on the doors. Next thing that happens with these is they go off to Jesse, and we'll let the pros handle the rest. I think we're going to stop here. Doors are all done, ready to go. The cab is just about 100% done. Next time, the last video you're going to see as far as this kind of work on the cab will be doing the seatbelt mounts. Once that's done, this whole thing is ready to go off for final body work and paint. I want to thank you for sticking around for this video, and hopefully we'll see you next time.